acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on, as we always do. We want to acknowledge our ancestors and those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stewards whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So once again, thank you everyone for coming to this session today. We have a phenomenal panel here, and I just want to get them to introduce themselves. So Ryan, if you want to go ahead, are you ready to introduce yourself? Ryan Knight, or we can start with Charles.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, my name is Ryan Knight, one of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, also one of the volunteers of Black Boys Code, so definitely getting our youngins into technology, and that's why I love this topic so much. But I'm also an entrepreneur myself. I do run a company called Detailing Nights that provides mobile waterless car cleaning, and we run a youth entrepreneurship program within DK to show our young stars that they have the potential to start their own businesses and not just have to go out there looking for jobs. Thank you.
Love it. That's great. Thank you for that. And Charles, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, good morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the country. I'm Charles Buchanan. I'm the founder and CEO of Technology Help. So we're a technology company. I'm an entrepreneur, and so I'm in the business of on a mission to end technology poverty in community and in the nonprofit sector. And when I'm not in that, I do volunteer. I do work in community. I'm a founding board member of the Calgary Black Chambers. I'm also recently joined the board of the Black Business and Professional Association, and I do mentor entrepreneurs in the Venture Mentoring Society of Alberta. So among other things. Looking forward to this conversation. It's something that I'm really passionate about.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's definitely a conversation that everyone should want to tune in for, especially as it relates to the Black community and everybody with business and an online platform. So good to hear that both of you are into some form of mentorship and training of the youth. I really appreciate that. So let me go ahead and get started. And Charles, this first question is for you. Can you share your experiences of developing a thriving model in tech ecosystems in Canada as a Black founder?
Okay. A thriving model as a Black founder in the tech ecosystem. That's a big question. So I could probably Technology Helps is what the business I run now. And we've been at this for just about 7 years, focused exclusively on social good organizations and underserved companies. So with a mission to end technology poverty, I started this organization 7 years ago, just an idea, just that there's a problem out there, I need to solve it. And I jumped in, and it wasn't with a business plan or an approach or any of the logical things that they would teach you normally. It was go with passion and then learn as you go and execute as required. And it's not something I would recommend, but after several years of what I would call active experimentation and learning on the ground and working actively, we're comfortably have a team of over 20 people. We've served well over 200 organizations coast to coast, and we're now, in this fiscal year, we're moving into the US and global markets. So it is definitely possible with a good approach.
That's good to hear. And Ryan, in terms of ACBN, we've seen your remarkable progress in the digital adoption. What are some of the challenges or emerging opportunities that you've come across in your journey?
One of the, I'll say, challenges is definitely getting the team on board with now shifting our mindset from analog to fully digital. There's still, hey, I'm guilty of it. You want to write things down on paper, and then those notes get lost when they should have been put into the Slack channel. Then it would go to the team member that signed the task, and then it gets done. So because that shift to fully digital, and now we're trying to help entrepreneurs with that shift to fully digital, all of their documents of processes, procedures, HR policies, auditing, documentation auditing, that can all now be digital. So we're guiding people through the process of shifting from when we go to see some entrepreneurs in their office and the papers are stacked, that the systems are not, that there's some flaws in the workflow. So by slowly, you don't want to launch people into like the full adaptation of technology, because it can be a culture shock. And especially for bigger companies, it takes some time to, each division has to kind of understand their own process. So when the CEO comes in, and sometimes you go to conferences and you come in hype and you're like, we're gonna shift everything, everybody gets nervous. So we as an organization are going through that process and then helping business owners as well with that transformation. So as we feel it, we know what entrepreneurs are also feeling as well.
That's good. It's good to know, the nervousness they're going through and the anxiety, and, not too much too fast. One step at a time. Charles, how do you feel about your journey as it pertains to the same?
Well, well, we're a technology company, so we're digital first. So we were fortunate in the sense that, coming out of years in corporate, I would not have gone with any kind of analog-based system. It was digital first, and we're in an age where, with cloud technologies and so it's possible to leapfrog a lot of the stages. So if you're starting a company anytime in the last 5 years or even now, you could be almost exclusively digital. So we are that way. We run everything in the cloud, and I could do pretty much every aspect of my job from my phone, except for the one thing I don't enjoy doing on my phone is spreadsheets. But everything else, I can see, I have a 360-degree view of my clients, everything from our initial engagement to service provided to them to billing and finance. So so that's how we do it.
I think that's huge, because even as a millennial, I think I still have fears of going completely digital. So it's definitely a bit of a learning curve. So glad you're leading the way. As it relates to cybersecurity in the Black-led nonprofits, what are some of the gaps and opportunities that you see in the ecosystem, Charles?
Oh, goodness. What are the gaps? I think they're probably, I don't know if there are gaps. I think there's more holes than solid space, right? I wouldn't say we're not at the stage where we could talk about gaps yet. We're at the stage where we're still talking about we need to have cybersecurity. We don't. Years ago, I was warning people that there's a threat. Now the landscape, the threat landscape is such that it's just overwhelming, and most organizations are doing, I would say, less than 10% of what's necessary to protect themselves. And Black-led and Black-serving nonprofits, they are. I was thinking about it this morning, and I was dreading it, that they are. It's actually would be quite scary if these organizations were to be targeted for any attacks, because they're just completely vulnerable in the space. And I think we're going to be talking about this some more. But right now, I'm just setting the stage by saying I don't think organizations are safe, and they're nowhere near safe. And there are ways that they could do better. I'll let Ryan add to that.
Well, and it's so naive for us to think that we're safe when, who was the big one that got hit? There was a company that was LastPass, the password company that is in charge of protecting all of our passwords, got hacked. We're hearing about Sick Kids Hospital getting hacked, and that they're very focused on cybersecurity. So no one's safe. And a lot of times, I'm sure Charles will attest, it's the human error that allows for the breaches. You can have all your technology perfect, and somebody plugs something into your computer without you knowing. And I've seen kind of those data breach consultants show different ways that people can hack, and they'll put a fan on your table that plugs into your USB, but that fan is actually extracting data and your passwords. So just by you allowing somebody to touch your computer, now the breach can happen. So for us as organizations running, we have a database of about 5,000. If that ever becomes of interest to a hacker, I don't see why, because we're so small, but I would rather be prepared, even though we think that we're small. A lot of times it's just AI and artificial intelligence that's running algorithms that if they spot a weakness, you get hacked. So it's not even about them targeting you, it's just about you being vulnerable. And if they can access it, then suddenly your system's shut down.
That's crazy. Definitely good to know. As you said, it's better to be proactive than caught once you are something that's on their radar and you're not prepared. So thank you so much for that, Ryan. Charles, you've been collaborating with the Canadian Centre for Nonprofit Digital Resilience. Can you share some actionable insights on that work?
So, well, yeah, with Cinder, I think that's what I call themselves now. There is I think like we've been doing this work like at Technology Helps for several years, and we've been like beating a drum on technology is important to the nonprofit sector. And it was refreshing a couple of years ago when Cinder got started, where there's a focus on the digitalization of digital advancement and the use of digital technology in the sector. So with Cinder, yes, I'm one of the founding advisors, and I lead the cybersecurity practice along with Katie for the organization. And the goal there is to basically provide education and a system of safety or resources around cybersecurity for nonprofits. And it's still fairly early stage. We're still looking at it's probably going a little bit slower than I would like, because I mean, when you get to know me, we're like I'm just naturally wired for action. So it's still going, we're still educating, but we haven't we've put some solutions out there, but we haven't formalized what's available for the crowd as yet. But it is a good organization. It's focused on helping and providing a safe space to talk about technology issues. And I encourage people to tune into what's happening over there.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm so curious. I wanted to piggyback that question, Blessed, because we as ACBN went through a cybersecurity audit and failed terribly. So I'm curious, Charles, your thoughts on what organizations can do to start preparing themselves to improve their cybersecurity.
Right. Okay, so yeah, so I'll start with some very basics about cybersecurity, and not basics. I'm not condescending or anything. So And I think, and what I hope at the end of this conversation is people will walk away not feeling, I mean, everybody's here because they're concerned, and people should be rightfully concerned about cybersecurity. It is real. The threat's real. It's dangerous, and there are two kinds of organizations: those that know they've been hacked and those that don't know they've been hacked. Right. So but at the end of it really comes down to information assets and the protection of your information assets, and that's all it really is. It's enterprise risk around those assets. So if you start thinking about what are your information assets, it's any information that you use in the course of your business, whether it's your client information, your financial information, anything else. And there are only three things that could really happen to it. It could become unavailable, where you just don't have access to it. It could become untrusted, where you don't know, somebody might have messed with this, or it falls into the wrong hands, right? So that's it. Important things, and three things that can happen to your important things. And then the job is to protect against these things happening. So earlier, Ryan said they're small and nobody is going to bother them. But yes, if somebody says, okay, we're just going to lock you out of your system, you're shut down for the day. If you don't have a backup, you don't have a way to recover. So you have to look at what could potentially happen to these important assets. And if something were to happen to them, would you know it happened? I mean, do you have monitoring in place? And what do you do when that happens? If you have private information, do you have to report it to the Privacy Commissioner? Do you have to inform people? Could you, and then how big a deal it is? So you don't have to really take measures for every single thing to protect every single piece of information in your organization. Because if you like your publicly available information, okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, grab that information. I could replace it, or something it's not really important. So you can have that. Or if this information is unavailable for a day or so, I could go about my business. So there are ways. You have to look at your information, what could happen, and then take various approaches. But then you also have to look at, back to Brian's point, the weak link is always the people. And it's really about teaching, I said it's like teaching your kids to lock the door and not walk down dark alleys at night, right? Because it's really about that. It's like, yes, it's scary out there, but you don't have to stand around. You don't have to be a victim. So things will happen, and they will happen, but the impact of that is what we can manage.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I hope that helps, Ryan. It definitely makes it more clear, right? To get those exact steps that we need to take, simple things, basic things. And this question is for you, Ryan. I know you're an advisor to the Canadian Centre for Nonprofit Resilience as well. You're a founder of the Decolonizing Data Institute, if I'm correct.
Yes, yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. So they're launching in May. Is there anything that you'd like to share on that and give us like some foresight into that as it's coming?
Oh, absolutely. Because this is an area that I feel we've been lacking as a community in our own data collection and controlling our own narratives by using the data to make decisions. And the Colonizing Data Institute, again, being worked on with myself, Ayana Landsberg, also Catherine Babcock and Arlene McDonald, and really, and many others, because this is a broad sweeping type of work where we're looking at what is the data that is pertinent to the Black community. And that is going to be a lot of frequency tables and a lot of information. And Capital W's already done such great work in capturing information about charities and information that typically just goes on a shelf and gets filed away. We're now able to dissect that data and use the Decolonizing Data Center to understand what's happening with Black charities and the Black community, and then use that information to make better decisions for our community. And we've seen that data for generations has been weaponized against BIPOC communities, weaponized and also, I'm gonna create a word, opportunized, like where there's organizations that serve the Black community that aren't Black-led, aren't Black run, yet they know the data about the community to go out and get the money, get the grants, and now they're, a good percentage goes to overhead and very few dollars actually gets to the community and the work. So by flipping that so that 80% gets to the work and that 20% handles the admin, that's where we feel Decolonizing Data Institute can help the community flip the script so that we can use data for our own benefit instead of being a victim of it.
I love that. Really appreciate that answer. So in your lived experience, what are some best practices that you feel are essential in this work? We'll start with you, Ryan.
We're all collecting data. I think if we look at Facebook and what their model is, every single thing you do is a data point. Now, of course, we don't have the master mega algorithms of the Googles and the Facebooks, but even in our organizations and in our day-to-day lives, we can be capturing interactions and saying, I met somebody, what do I know about them, and documenting that. And now as an organization, as that grows, we started 5 years ago and literally with 6 people, now we have a database of 5,500. Now we have to start thinking, along the way, we should have been thinking this. And I know Charles is gonna remind me that along the way, we should have been thinking, how do we protect people's data? Because they're coming to our events, we're capturing information, we're talking to entrepreneurs, we're capturing sensitive information. So some things can be curated and created reports about. Other things are more personal that you create customized programming. So everything that we do, we can't just let it kind of drift into the ether. We should be purposeful with our data personally and with the people that we serve, so that way we can make better decisions. One big, example of that, we were able to commission the first Black labor market assessment, and thanks to the work that we're doing with Setsi to be able to get this done, because now we're able to dig deeper into the statistics of Black entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship and how that's happening in the Black community. And then how are we engaging? How many of us are engaged in IT and technology, cybersecurity conversations? The data shows we're not very engaged in it, yet the fourth industrial revolution is coming. So the world is moving to where Charles is talking about data, technology first, yet business owners are still in the analog industry, coming out of just trying to catch up. And if we don't get ahead of these trends, we're going to get left behind. So if the conversation about data and protecting data with cybersecurity isn't on that agenda for your monthly meetings or your weekly meetings, your check-ins, your daily meetings, actually you should be doing with your team, get it on the agenda so that this can be top of mind.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Charles, how do you feel on the same?
Yeah. No, I'm really encouraged that there's some leadership being taken on this. Like I'm excited to see the work happening there, because it's it's been one of these topics that, yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure why it hasn't been on the table for a while, maybe because people just don't understand data, or people just, but we need to get to the state where we realize that, just get to fundamental or basic understanding of the importance of data that we produce, and data about us, like our community or organizations. And we have to recognize, I mean, I gave a talk at a conference last year, and we're talking about data being the new oil, and you know, or the new the colonization. It's happening through data. And you now have like the mega companies like the Facebooks and the Microsofts and the Googles, and they are like pretty much the colonial powers of past, right? And it's and we're just sitting there and we're just feeding these. I mean, granted, in some regards, we're practically powerless. Like, we don't control, we can't stop the data collection that happens when we engage with our devices, and when we travel, and when we use it. We just can't do much about it, but we can actually be mindful of it, and just and realize that, yes, this is information being collected about us, and then start doing our own thing around, like, so I'm really like, I'd love to spend, you know, after this conversation, connect with Ryan and see exactly what's happening there, and just how we could educate people to start taking data seriously, because it can be very empowering. Like, I mean, like the use of data for, you know, for effectiveness. Like, I mean, when I just heard, yeah, when you mentioned that, there are people who we're talking about us, but getting grants and funding at our expense, and we're just standing there, just being, like, no, we're no less smart nor less sophisticated. And I think it's because we've been, I won't say it's negligence, but it's also one of the things that we haven't been at the table, and now we are. So now that we're there, we need to really take our place there and start being very active, and just and keep pushing organizations. Yeah, the information about your programs, the information about your clients, the communities you serve, the opportunities you seek are yours, and we can find ways to provide these you know, data mechanisms, or some tools that people could use to take advantage of data, or even to protect themselves, or protect the data that they do have in certain ways.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback that, because what Charles is mentioning, a lot of times we don't realize what's happening around us. We're focused on the day-to-day. Hey, sometimes we're in survival mode. Yet the thing I say a lot of times in our seminars is, there's so much money flowing that if it's not flowing to you, we have to move ourselves into the flow of money, because we'll hear the announcements from these government officials about XYZ dollars being rolled out. And then you look at your organization, you realize, but I haven't gotten a penny of that. So somebody's getting it. And then when you look at the process that they use to get it, that's when you start to realize how valuable data is. That's one thing that I would echo that Charles has said, is we don't realize how valuable our data is, how valuable our thoughts and opinions are. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but you might get a call from a representative at United Way, for example, or another nonprofit that suddenly is very interested in your community. And so you have that discussion. They are collecting data to use in their reports and to use in their applications. Yet if you organize, and I'll say that for myself, that's what we started to do with ACBN, and I'll credit Brother Victor on coaching me on how to structure our organizations so that we can use data that we've already been collecting to now be successful with grant applications. Because it's the everyday work that you're doing, when it's organized, it becomes such a powerful report. And the money, how this system is structured, they like to see reports. And that was something that I wasn't comfortable with. I was like, why do I have to spend time doing a report about something that I innately experience every single day? But hey, we have to work in the system that we're in. They like black and white paper, written documents to be presented in a certain way. And when you do it, it unlocks a lot of opportunities. So being comfortable with using technology for our benefit, it has to start with technology first. If we're not there, then we're always playing catch up, because everybody that you're going up against knows this, and they're way well-resourced, better resourced than you. So typically they have people that are full-time using data, collecting data, writing reports. So if your organization's small, again, you're going up against the big guns, so we have to get organized. And that's where collaboration comes in. If we're not collaborating as organization and as a community, now it's very small pockets of siloed attempts to try and get money and get noticed. But if we bring it together, and a lot of our reports, and there's now a Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, hey, being able to add the research that we've done, anybody else that's in this ecosystem, what research have you done on your own work? Let's compile it together so that we can move with one message and a lot stronger voice.
I love that. Charles said that, we're at the table now, we need to take up space. And Ryan is touching on how we actually take up space. So getting those reports done, doing our own research, and going after it. So I really appreciate the dialogue. As it relates to structural racism, I think this was a perfect segue. As it relates to structural racism, anti-Black racism, and systemic discrimination, what best practices, tools, or models do you see that would genuinely help to advance justice in the tech and nonprofit space in Canada? Charles, we can start with you.
So yeah, we can start there. And but before we jump into that, I'll just touch on one more thing on what Ryan said earlier about the reports. I think it's being at the table, we should also challenge the reporting that we're asked to produce. We should ask, what are you doing with that information that you're collecting? Like, what is it? What decisions is it decision making is it driving, and how does that really impact? Or is it really just a hurdle, another, barrier that you're placing in front of organizations that do not have the mechanisms, that just want to get to work in the community? Why do you need that kind of information? Why do you, do I have to have a formal theory of change established, or a logic one? Or do I just want to feed kids or mentor kids or help my community? So I'll just touch on that first. But then when it comes to the tools that we need to level the playing field, as it were, or to take our place at the table, the first and foremost, you'll always hear me pushing on digital first. So it's about connectivity, having the fundamentals in place that you are digitally connected and digitally enabled to function and participate, which means that you need to have the model that we've created around that is one where you need to have access, which is having basic equipment and a reliable internet connection, right? Secondly, you need skills. You need to know what to do. You need and skill development isn't a one and done. It's continuous learning, because the technologies keep changing, and then there's the support, some kind of support mechanism somewhere to get some answers, and that's something that we could provide to our entrepreneurs, we could provide to our communities. And then the other one is security. If you're not doing this safely, sometimes you're better off not doing it at all. So that's how I would see the very basic levels. And then above that, you could start talking about specialized technologies. You can start talking about apps. You can start, but without the fundamentals or the basics, you're not in the game at all, right?
That's good to know.
That's so true. We run to start building apps. Everybody has an app idea. But like you said, if that foundation isn't there, we can't jump to those things because it'll fizzle under this weak foundation.
Yeah. No, we're building an app now for emergency food, because in Calgary, and I'm sure that it applies across Canada, the food banks only give hampers every 2 weeks or a month or so. If you need food within the next 24 to 48 hours, there's nowhere you can find. There's no common food resource. So yes, you can. So we started off, and you could build an app for it. Then many of people who are building apps don't have lived experience. So we are building the app now, but then we realized that we can't just build an app, because someone said, why don't you just have an app with a map on it and you could just pinch? I'm like, the people who need emergency food do not have access to the state-of-the-art technology to participate in this. So we're going to have something as simple as they don't have data. And it's like, and so I'm thinking, who doesn't have data on their phones? But they don't have data, so they have to have some kind of a text mechanism. It has to be somewhere where they could call in to get the information. They have to go, available on public kiosks. So So it is more than just it. So and it comes right back to what's the base level that people are at with technology, and what can we do to just kind of uplift, just get the base higher so people can truly participate.
Absolutely. And what is technology? I feel we get pigeonholed because of media, and they talk about the new shiny app. But just like you said, technology, in a certain way, interactive kiosk is also a use of technology. So understanding the full lay of the land of what options and tools we have to work with is something that typically we don't get guidance with. We're just told, oh, okay, if you have internet and social media, you're good. Now you're in technology, but that's not a full grasp of what's available and what's possible. So getting that kind of guidance from a team like Charles with technology helps, shortens timeframes. A lot of times we want to figure out things on our own, request help, and always, ask, because shorten those timeframes as best you can.
Once again, Ryan, you've set us up for my next question. So what is the importance of eldership and intergenerational collaboration in the Black communities across Canada? Ryan, if you want to go ahead and take that question.
Yeah, oh man, this is a question that really sticks with me because I think about it a lot as, I would say, a person that runs an organization. So you're able to see the organizations that have come before you, and then you're able to see the organizations coming behind you. And you use that experience to say, okay, how was I treated? What was my relationship to my elders? What did I learn? Am I building something new when something's already built and I could just be building on top of that foundation? And I ask myself that question because that's the question I ask younger, newer organizations when they reach out to me for help. And they're like, oh, I'm thinking of this new thing to support, like Charles was saying, I'm building a food bank. But have you talked to other food banks that exist to maybe add your expertise to that? I noticed that we always like to come up with ideas because we see the need, but we start from scratch. So what ACBN we try to do is create a foundation that supports newer organizations so that we can be their infrastructure, and then they can grow to a point where they can go off on their own. But that was something I saw missing from the eldership I was working with, that I didn't know how to connect into their system so that I didn't have to start from scratch. But even with that said, I would spend a lot of time talking to them because I know they were in this realm for decades, sometimes what's longer than, not centuries. So, but they're already paved the way. So you have to learn as much as you can from your elders. And that takes that conversation. What I don't like is that a lot of times our elders they're regulated to 5-minute clips. They'll be part of an event, a conference, and they're given some time to speak. Maybe you get a 30-minute keynote, but you really don't get to sit at their feet, ask questions, hear their full story without these time limits. So if there's something that we can do better, is giving our elders the platform to say, take your time. This is what we just want to learn what you've done. And then from there, how do we build together? Because our elder, Jean Augustine, she's still alive. I feel like people talk about her as if she's gone. It's like, she's still here to learn from. We should be having monthly sessions to go to her establishment and just learn about what she's done so that we can continuously learn and walk with them, instead of seniors are kind of here, youth are here, and then I feel like I'm in between because I have children and my parents and grandparents. We have to find a way to interconnect it all so that we're learning purposefully and not just by accident.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that comment. And Charles, how do you feel on the same topic?
Yeah, how do we define elders? Like, I don't want to age myself here, but so I would say it's up to Brian's point. Yeah, so I'm openly Black. When I say openly Black, I mean I'm out and about Black, but I'm also open to Black people who need advice or want my time, and young entrepreneurs and students and mentors, and I do not turn down invitations to events like this. Right, these are important events, and and I recognize that, yes, I've been at this for a very long time, and I have a platform and I have things I've learned. They're not always true, always right. I mean, I made mistakes, and yeah, I just gave an interview about for Black entrepreneurs. It's about failures. Like, I mean, just and that's something that we don't talk about enough. Like, I mean, things don't always work right, and you want to know how to deal with failure. A lot of, like your first failure is the hardest. But I think in terms of intergenerational, yes, we need to have more conversations. And it's and first and foremost, we need to know who's who and who's done what. So there's some kind of we need to promote things that we need to let people know. Yeah, I'm not sure how you find out about, like, I mean, who's done things. Like, I mean, how do you teach your children about what's happened in the world? And that's why, like, at Calgary Black Chambers, what we have, our mentorship program, we align kids with people who are in professions they're thinking of going into. And where it's like, yeah, you're going into law. Okay, here's a Black lawyer who can talk about. So it's just knowing something, and they could just tell you what life is like there. So yes, I would say, like, I mean, I think Victor dropped in something about When Elders Speak series that's coming up, or it's probably a series that we have now, but it's something that needs to happen, more conversations, and people should make themselves more available, and not just for 5 minutes here and there in cameo appearances, but just say, yeah, spend the time, like, and it won't be a major drain on your time. It's actually very, it's very rewarding and very good work to do, to just stay connected and just help people, and just and yeah, it's not writing books, but it's having more conversations like this. And it should, we should have, twice as many people participating in this conversation right now.
Thank you. Yes, as you said, Victor did drop a link to the series When Elders Speak. So I encourage everyone to click on that, subscribe, and take a listen, because we do have a series of elders there who are, as you said, sharing and doing their part to pass the information down. So if you want to scroll up and click on that link and then subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be great. Thank you for that. The last question, in terms of Black tech leaders in Canada or community stewards that have paved the way, I know that you did mention already some, the two of you being empowered Black men, are there any ancestors or living elders that you would accredit your inspiration from? Ryan, you can go ahead and start with that question.
My Bible is The Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson. So when we talk about ancestors that already created blueprints, like literal books that say, this is what we can do to empower the community. Living by Elder Errol Gibbs, who wrote recently the Black Empowerment Manifesto. These are things that I study, and people think I'm smart, but I'm really not. I just listen to smarter people, and Victor knows this. Is like, when he talks, I'm like, that is a good idea. Let's move. So the eldership around us and from before us, they've already experienced a lot of the issues, and they've paved this way, but they might not have been at the right time to execute what we can execute now. And I used Jean Augustine as an example. When I hear her story, the fights that she had to go through in her time of trying to move up the ranks and become the first MP, or the first female MP, those are fights that we don't have now. Like, the type of racism that she was fighting, it might be more passive, but it wasn't as overt as when she tells the story. So if we have more, I would say, free reign, we need to take that baton and now execute the game plan. We have to understand it's a marathon infinity game that we're in, whether it's business or community work. There is no sprint to a finish line. The more work that we can do to progress now based on where we've come, that's going to help the next generation progress even further. And I'm telling you, that's what they're afraid of, because this type of oppression that we face only comes when a person is scared, actually when an entire society is scared of that community surpassing them. And so we're seeing us catch up. If it takes 100 another years to get back to where we were, I'm willing to do my part in my lifetime now to make sure that my children or their children hit that stride so that we can continue to grow.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. If you could drop those books in the chat, Ryan, that would be greatly appreciated. Charles, Who is your inspiration?
So no, I wouldn't, nothing specifically. Like I've read those books and I've drawn inspiration from them and from people like Jean Augustine, like people who, and it's a composite. It's really just what I see are basically threads, and one of the threads that that Ryan pointed out was the struggle and the resistance that comes when progress is being made, right? The resistance increases with progress, right? So when it looks really, really hard, it's because you're breaking through. And I've seen people who've gone ahead. I've like taken lessons from elders and people who've gone before us, and it's like, and you just try not to, like, you're living in a different time, but the methods, your methods might be different, but in terms of your purpose is pretty much the same. So I'm doing everything I can, making myself available, working hard to change the system. And sometimes it's like even changing the system from within is probably more the answer than changing it than just trying to change it from the outside. But there's a lot that we are making progress. Like, I mean, when we just recently had Black History Month dinner at Heritage Park, and it's like, and it was just fabulous. Like, I mean, we've never had those kind of events in the very white part of the country that I live in, right?
That's good to know. Thank you so much for sharing. The final question to both of you is, what is your call to action for the Black communities across Canada? Ryan, if you want to start us off on that.
My call to action, so I'll tell you a quick story. The ACBN, we're part of the federal Black entrepreneurship ecosystem, 44 organizations that work together to support Black businesses. My call to action to them was to show up. We feel every time we have meetings, it feels like we're introducing ourselves for the first time. Yet we've been working on this ecosystem for a year. So if we're meeting each other for the first time, there's a problem. And again, this series that Setsi has been able to put together allows us to collaborate and talk to each other on a consistent basis. And some people will feel, oh, every day you guys are going to do something every day? Yes. Is our empowerment a priority or not? If it's a priority, show up to things. People say, Ryan, you're always going to different events and galas and conferences, because presence is important. Those that are on this call now, being present is not lost on me. That's something that I wholeheartedly appreciate, because when you show up, you're able to interact and actually feed off each other's energy and create that mastermind that creates new ideas that you can't come up with on your own. So and again, with Setsi's help, we created a study group coming out of the conference that we did in June. We said, how do we keep the conversation going? Hey, let's create a study group. Every week we're gonna meet and at least share notes, and we're actually studying the Black Empowerment Manifesto. And not to say that is the be all end all, but it's one of the few blueprints that I've seen. So if you have a better blueprint, present it. Don't come to a meeting in front of ministers and kind of beat your chest about how much we should collaborate. And I was like, no, we need to change our language. Stop talking about that we need to collaborate and realize that we are collaborating. And since we are collaborating, join in and add to what we're doing instead of letting people think that we're starting from scratch. No, we're past that. So my call to action is see what's happening. You're already present here, so I know that you're taking action to be present. Now look what else is happening with strategy. And that's one piece that I noticed, that as a community, we typically don't give ourselves space and time to strategize. That's what the study group does, so that we're always so busy in the work that we don't get to kind of step back and create strategies for our community. And so let's go from theory to strategy to operational action.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Charles, how do you feel?
Yeah. But yeah, I won't have as much as Ryan on this, because this is his space. He's passionate. But what I'd say is that showing up clearly, like, first and foremost. But then the other one is connect, like, I mean, talk and collaborate. We're not competing here. We are, we're a small group of people, and we're tough, we're strong, and we have a lot of work to do, work ahead of us. We cannot. There's no room for infighting. Like, I mean, we have to, approach this in a unified manner and collaborate. And there's and the other thing, yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah, it's like, and recognize that this is a big country, you know, I mean, like that there, you know, Canada goes there is a Canada west of Brampton, right? Like, so there's and that's good to see. Like, I mean, 2 years ago, I'm pretty sure yeah, you guys probably didn't even know I existed. So COVID probably helped in that sense to kind of tighten the country together, because we can have more, you know, online conversations became more the norm. So I would say more conversations, more online. And yeah, even if, and yes, do not be alarmed by the frequency of these interactions. We do need those. We're at a formative stage. These are the spaces in which we create relationships. We get to know each other. We get to realize that we stand for the same thing, and we're on the same mission. So yeah, let's just keep doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Still very informative. Do either of you have any final closing thoughts, Ryan?
As Charles said, yes, I think COVID helped us expand past Brampton, west and east, because we were definitely locked into Peel with the work that we were doing. And that's where, when we talk about utilizing technology, and that's again something that our elders and our ancestors did not have. Imagine one ancestor that I definitely try to study as much as I can is Marcus Garvey. And the way that he was able to mobilize the community is, there's no words for it without realizing the type of technology that they were using. I'm talking like newspaper print. Like, we have the ability with the internet and even text messaging to send messages around the world. And yet we didn't figure out a way to build on the foundation that he had set. So that would be a challenge. That's what I challenged myself, is how do we look at that blueprint that he was able to create and now duplicate it in this time, because we should be able to exponentially fast track what he was able to do based on the technology that exists. Again, it was a different time. Maybe there was more appetite to come together and rally around that type of championing cry. But I do believe around the world, there's enough people that have the same sentiment that we do on this call right now, that we were only able to get in this space through this type of technology. We can use it to amplify and get our message to everybody that is also on this mission too.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Charles, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, embrace technology. That's right. Embrace it. It's not something to be feared. It's not something to be overcome. It's something to be embraced. It's something that we got to own. It's something that will help us. We can fast track our way forward with technology, leapfrogging a lot of analog infrastructure. Like, I mean, like, you'll know that there are places that did not have, you know, telephone or telecommunications infrastructure built in. They've leapfrogged that. They don't need that. Now they could just go straight to cell phones, right? There are people who did not have system, you know, software installed. They could leapfrog that. They could just rent it in the cloud. So there's so many things we could do, but above all things, do it safely. And I encourage people to connect with me. Like I said, I'm available. I'm not just here for a cameo. I'm, you know, like, I mean, reach out. I will give guidance. I will give my thoughts. You can run something by me. You could just, you know, you just call me and just tell me you're wrong, and I'll learn from you. So that's it. So let's stay in touch.
There you go. So both gentlemen have made themselves very available. If both of you want to just drop your contacts, preferred contacts in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. I really loved this panel. This was really informative, way more interesting and educational than I had ever anticipated. And I want to close on this quote from Lila Watson. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And I think that's a great way to close. I also want to close this session by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we are on as we started. We want to acknowledge our ancestors and all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. I also want to acknowledge all the elders and the community stewards whose shoulders we stand on as we continue to build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and our sovereignty. Thank you so much for coming out, everyone. Have a great day.